Hey there, Detroit sports fanatics, and welcome to Taylor's Detroit Sports episode 43. They realized I skipped episodes 43 and 47, and they made me do this today before the Tigers game. So, gonna talk some football and all football. Lions, Wolverines, and Spartans. First, a quick update on Kyle Van Noy. He is expected to he will miss at least 8 weeks. Due to his core muscle injury. Dave Burkett tweeted from the Detroit Free Press, the Lions have re-signed Darryl Tapp, who was released in final cuts last Saturday. I just got the update from Bleacher Report. You can download the Bleacher Report Team Stream app on your smartphone, and you can follow Dave Burkett on Twitter at Dave Burkett. Couple other, three other things about the Lions. J.J. Watts' $100 million deal could complicate Lions' efforts to re-sign defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh. Kyle Meinke writes, Suh was handed $100 million over 6 years, good for an average annual income of $16.6 million. That makes him the highest paid defensive player in professional football. A cool $51.876 million of that deal is guaranteed, according to the Houston Chronicle. And it could complicate the Detroit Lions' efforts to re-sign their own star defensive lineman. He's entering the final year of his rookie deal, as we recall, and efforts to extend him have heretofore proved fruitless. Or fruitless, as in fruition. The Lions originally hoped to have a new deal in place in March, but apparently Suh turned that down. Because after months of negotiations, the sides remained far apart, and the Lions eventually shut down talks at the start of training camp. So things are getting a little tighter. It's becoming more 50-50 on whether the Lions should sign Ndamukong Suh or not. I'd say give the Lions some more time to think about it until the end of the season. Because after just about everybody numerously saying that Ndamukong Suh will sign elsewhere, and I know some, including Matt Derry from Detroit Sports 105.1, are still saying just that. I myself don't even know. We'll have to see. Suh is an incredible pass rusher, as you can see as you have seen in the past on television. On the defensive front, he has usually paired up very good with Nick Fairley and Stephen Tulloch. And I am hoping the Lions and Ndamukong Suh get a deal done and get that deal done. At least agree on that $100 million contract for 6 years. Other news. Back to injury-wise, safety James Ihedigbo, 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 has refuted his idea of injury and insists that he's just resting. Jillian Van Straat of MLive.com writes that Ihedigbo did not play against Jacksonville and did not practice Monday. Lions head coach Jim Caldwell told the media in Buffalo that the decision was made because Ihedigbo could get treatment a little better at home. And that's all he said. And that's all he wanted to say. And Ihedigbo told them that he's just resting and getting ready for Monday night against the Giants. That's the mindset going in. And he's just doing what he's told. That's what was told to him, and that was the best thing for their team, for his team, and that's what he does, is whatever is the best thing for our team. Well, that's good. And that's really our coaching staff's mindset. Really, their coaching staff's mindset is what's best for the team. He said that not traveling to Buffalo was an idea, and thought about it, and it worked well. And he also said, to cap it off, that he planned to be rested enough to play next Monday at Ford Field against the New York Giants. And that game on opening night is set for 7:10 kickoff time. That's going to be on ESPN Monday Night Football with Mike Tirico and John Gruden. And speaking of the Giants, Jillian Van Straat writes in an article by the numbers on the New York Giants. The first number is 1, which is the number of touchdown passes Eli Manning had in the preseason. The Giants hired a new offensive coordinator in the offseason, Ben McAdoo, who has never been an offensive coordinator until this season and spent the past 8 seasons as Green Bay's tight ends coach, installed what's referred to as a fast-paced West Coast system. A rookie coordinator plus a brand new system Eli Manning that is, equaled a shaky preseason for the Giants offense. The first string offense scored a total of 2 touchdowns in 4 preseason games. The second number, 0, is the number of preseason games wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. played. The Giants took him with a number 12 overall pick in the draft earlier this calendar year. Beckham missed the team's June minicamp with a hamstring injury. He aggravated in the first practice of training camp. He returned a couple times throughout camp, but aggravated it again and hasn't practiced since August 18th. There's no way Beckham Jr. will be ready to go for the Lions game Monday, and head coach Tom Coughlin is so tired of being asked about Beckham Jr.'s return. He went on a tirade yesterday at his press conference. Without their number one pick, designed to fit perfectly in their new offense, Jarrell Jernigan will start in the outside receiver spot. Third number, 134.6 is the number of rushing yards per game averaged by the Giants in the preseason. This was the best news out of August for the G-men. Their rushing yardage ranked fifth best in the NFL. This is in comparison to the fact that the Giants ranked 29th in the NFL last season with 83.2 yards rushing per game. The Giants also held opponents to an average of 87.8 rushing yards per game, which was sixth lowest in the NFL this preseason. Number 4, 27, is the number of interceptions Eli Manning threw last season, a career high. Ouch. 16 of them came during the team's 0-6 start last year. Because of this, the Giants were thrilled that Manning threw 0 interceptions in the preseason, and backup quarterbacks Ryan Nassib and Curtis Painter from Purdue were also interception-free, despite the other struggles on offense. Despite the other struggles of the offense. One final number, 6. Because of the hamstring injury to Beckham Jr. and the fact that former Michigan Wolverine wide receiver Mario Manningham got dinged up and didn't make the roster, the Giants were forced to carry 6 wide receivers on their final 53-man roster, including undrafted free agent Corey Washington and Preston Parker, who is there primarily as a punt returner. This had a ripple effect at other positions. NYG, the New York Giants, only had room for 3 tight ends, none of them veteran starters. Topping the tight end depth chart for their game against our Lions is Larry Donnell, who went undrafted out of Grambling State in 2012 after beginning his college career as a quarterback. He then spent his rookie year on the Giants practice squad and played all 16 games last season as a special teamer. Now to some college football. Starting with the Michigan Wolverines. The Associated Press release from Stephen Lawrence of Wolverine 24/7 via 247sports.com. The Associated Press released their Week 2 polls this afternoon, and Michigan remained unranked heading into their showdown with Notre Dame set on Saturday night. But they received 38 votes, up from 19 last week from the panel, and technically that currently puts them at 32nd in the country. A win over the Irish, the Fighting Irish that is, would almost certainly vault Michigan into the rankings. Notre Dame is currently ranked 16th. The other Big Ten teams that are ranked are the Michigan State Spartans at 7, Ohio State at 8, Wisconsin 18th, Nebraska 19th, and Penn State is actually unranked, but received 49 votes. So, you can catch the Michigan Notre Dame matchup on NBC this upcoming Saturday night. At 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Both Michigan and Notre Dame are 1-0, as expected. Speaking of Notre Dame, by the numbers, Everett Golson lights up the stat sheet after a year without football. More from Jillian Van Straat here. 9-9-1 is Michigan's all-time record against Notre Dame in South Bend. With the Fighting Irish having opted out of the current deal, with the Fighting Irish having opted out of the current deal prior to the 2012 game, and this being the last game in the series for the foreseeable future, the Wolverines have a chance to get the final say and leave Notre Dame Stadium with a winning record. 600 in Everett Golson's first game back since missing all of last season for academic impropriety. He accounted for 5 touchdowns. He also became just the third Notre Dame quarterback to run for 3 touchdowns in a game in the Irish 48-17 win over Rice last Saturday. 14 of 22 for 295 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. It had been exactly 600 days since his last start in the 2013 BCS National Championship game versus Alabama. 5 is the total number of players that have now been suspended from Notre Dame's roster due to an academic investigation. Ouch. A 5th player, safety Ilar Hardy, a senior from Reynoldsburg, Ohio, was suspended on August 28th. He joins receiver Devarius Daniels, cornerback Kavari Russell, defensive end Isaac Williams, and linebacker Kendall Moore. Daniels, the only offensive player on the list, had 6 receptions for 63 yards last season in the Michigan game. 0-2. Notre Dame played relatively mistake-free football this past Saturday versus Rice. The Irish had 0 turnovers and committed just 2 penalties for a total of 10 yards. Alright, that's pretty impressive. 6-13. 6-4-13 rather. Despite racking up almost 600 yards of total offense, 576 to be exact, versus the Owls, the Rice Owls that is, the Irish converted less than 50% of their third downs, going 6 for 13. The Irish struggled on third down in 2013 as well, ranking just 53rd in the nation with a conversion rate of 42.05%. For Devin Gardner, speaking of by the numbers, he completed 13 of 28 passes for 98 yards. In the loss to Iowa, according to Brennan Yeah, Brendan F. Quinn of MLive.com. Brett Gardner had been struggling lately on the road and last season. Hasn't played on the road this year yet, but last year and lately overall are combined together. He finished 14 of 27 for 210 yards and one interception, 10 carries, and 12 yards. 10 carries for 12 yards on the keepers at Michigan State, and 11 for 23 passing for 97 yards and 2 interceptions. And 19 carries for 64 yards and a touchdown at Connecticut. Overall, as Michigan went 2-3 in 5 away games, Gardner completed 51.7% of his passes, 77 for 149. A dramatic drop-off from the 66.8% he completed in 7 games at Michigan Stadium. On the road, he threw for 6 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. At home, he threw for 15 touchdowns and 6 picks. He rushed for 2 touchdowns on the road, and he rushed for 9 at home. Last week against Appalachian State at home, he went 13 out of 14 for 173 yards and 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Shane Morris was the quarterback that threw the only interception on offense for Michigan. Now over to Michigan State. First off, before I preview the matchup against Oregon, which starts at 6:30 p.m. on Fox this Saturday night, Connor Cook last Friday, finished 12 of 13 for 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. That's an average of nearly 24 yards per completion and a touchdown nearly every 4 attempts. He completed his first 7 passes of the game, 2 of them way deep to Tony Lippett, both for touchdowns, to kick off the game against the Gamecocks of Jacksonville State at Spartan Stadium. That also gave him an ESPN Raw quarterback QBR rating of 99.98 on a scale of 100, which is the highest rating of any quarterback with at least 15 action plays in any of the last 10 seasons. QBR the quarterback rating. Yeah, quarterback rating is QBR's quarterback rating accounts for not only a player's stat line, but also down distance, field position, clocks, score, and a host of other factors. ESPN also calculated an adjusted QBR that factors in quality of defense, which would have undoubtedly lowered Cook's rating against an FCS team. Michigan State has won 11 straight going into Oregon. And the entire Spartans team is now 21-3 under Mark D'Antonio when reaching over 200 yards in rushing, which has happened 24 times in his tenure as Spartans head coach. By the numbers with Oregon. 79 from Jillian Van Strat on MLive.com. Oregon quarterback Marcus Mariota set a school record for most career touchdowns with 79 this past Saturday versus South Dakota. His 62-yard touchdown pass to Dwayne Stanford on the final play of the Ducks' opening drive jolted Mariota past Oregon great and former Detroit Lions quarterback Joey Harrington. Mariota then scored 3 more touchdowns against the Coyotes to bring his all-time record to 82, which is 67 in passing and 15 rushing in yards and 1 receiving. .673, the amount of yards Oregon put up on offense against the Coyotes. That's 108 more yards than the Ducks' average yards of offense per game last year, when they set a school record with 7,345 yards of total offense in one season. 138. The amount of yards receiving that Oregon running back Byron Marshall had, he had twice as many receptions, 8, and twice as many yards, 138, than the top wide receiver on the Ducks roster. Marshall averaged 14.3 yards every time he touched the ball, despite pulling a Deshaun Jackson in the second quarter. The Ducks have lost 6 defensive starters from last year on the roster, which include 2 defensive tackles, 1 linebacker, and 3/4 of its secondary. That leaves the Ducks rebuilding a defensive line that was already a perceived weakness in 2013. Oregon's front seven have had trouble against powerful offensive lines such as Stanford in recent years. In its opening game against South Dakota, they allowed 370 yards, 198 passing, and 172 on the ground. And finally, 23 1/4 sharp, 23.25 is the overall record actually, that's not it. The overall record between these teams is even, but the spread really is Michigan State being. The spread really is even. MSU is 2-2 all time versus the Ducks. The first time those two teams played was September 15th, 1979, when the Spartans crushed the Ducks 41-17 in East Lansing. It was Darrell Rogers' final season as head coach for the Spartans as they traveled to Eugene the following season under muddy waters and got crushed themselves, losing 35-7. The next home-and-home series didn't occur until 1998 and 1999 under Nick Saban. The first was a blowout loss on the road, 48-14, but the second in 1999 was a 27-20 win for the Spartans and a precursor for a successful 10-2 season. The 7-point win in '99 was the only close game in the series, which averages a point differential of 23.25, 23 and a quarter sharp in 4 games played. So that's all I have to cover for episode 43. Episode 47. Previewing Game 6 of the Tigers and Indians is next.